Hello there, just a little mini video here to respond to the Sargon of Akkad video, Is Shaun and Jen Controlled Opposition, posted on his secondary channel, The Finkery. So what's this about? Well, there was a Guardian article advocating free social housing written last month by a journalist, Poppy Noor, who's a social worker who writes about poverty and class and things. And Sargon commented about this article saying, this person has never lived in a council house. If she had, she wouldn't be advocating for everyone to be housed by the government. You know, by implication trying to paint her as a pampered rich kid who doesn't know the horrors of social housing. So now, I don't know if this person has lived in a council house before. However, I posted a little video to Carl showing that with very little research, you can find out that Poppy Noor is a former homeless person who had to live in various council homeless shelters for 3 years. Now, my intention doing that was to say, hey, not only does she know what council housing is, and of course she does, she's both a social worker and a journalist who writes about housing. Not only does she understand that, she actually has first-hand experience of the very worst social housing the system has to offer, living in homeless shelters. Sargon implying she's some dumb rich kid is wrong because she's actually a working class person who was homeless for years. And I was fully confident that anyone with half a brain would understand what I was saying there. Now, I didn't expect Sargon to respond to this because there's really only one response, and it's a bad one. And that's to say, well, actually, technically, a council shelter isn't the same as a council house. It is technically council housing, but it isn't a council house, which is just silly semantics, Now, I expected that from a few randos on Twitter, of course, but not from the man himself. But Carl made his video in which he makes the technically a shelter is not a house, I can't hear you argument, but also, unprompted, takes it a few steps further. You see, Carl doesn't actually know if this journalist has lived in a council house before. Just like me, it turns out, he's completely guessing that she grew up rich based on the average house price in the district in which she grew up, which is Plaistow in Newham.
So what's Plaistow like? Well, turns out that Plaistow, the average price of housing is £382,000, and that is higher than the average of Newham. You could compare this to somewhere like Durham, where the average house price is £127,000, and then you start to get an idea of the class differential.
Now, this is the reason I'm making this video, because this complete guess of Carl's is very funny for a few reasons, and the first is this. Carl, she's not 1 year old, man. She didn't entirely grow up in the past 12 months. Quite ignoring 20 plus years of massively increasing house prices and ignoring the fact that you're starting out with the assumption her parents purchased their house. I'll quote here from an article that you featured but didn't read enough of to get to this bit. The nurturing academic climate of her sixth form experience is abruptly juxtaposed with her earlier secondary years growing up in Plaistow. In the context of these years preceding the flurry of Olympic development projects in the East, Plaistow had a particularly high working class and ethnic minority contingent, with a very high proportion of her secondary classmates on free school meals. Now, did she herself qualify for free school meals? Yes. From this article of hers, she says, I am one of the few pupils to go to university from a free school meals background. Now, for you non-British people out there, free school meals are granted to families in the UK that struggle to feed their kids. You only qualify for them if you live in a very low-income household. So, her dad's a cab driver, her mother has schizophrenia and other mental health issues. She qualifies for free school meals. She identifies as working class. I'm guessing she didn't grow up rich. Maybe. But Carl is guessing she did, based on the current average house price in the area in which she grew up. Now, the next very funny thing about this is that if you're like me, you probably thought, hey, Plaistow in Newham, I wonder if there are any council estates near there. You see, Carl later posts all these photographs of council estates to show how horrible council housing's supposed to be. And it looks especially bad if it happens to have been abandoned for a long time, actually, Carl, but we'll ignore that for now. So are there any places like this in Plaistow in Newham, which is where the journalist grew up? Well, if you Google for Plaistow Council Estate, you see a bunch of pictures of places like that in Plaistow specifically. And if you search for Newham Council Estate, you see a bunch of similar looking places nearby in Newham. And if you're especially like me, you probably thought so. When Carl Googled for pictures of council estates, wouldn't it be very, very funny if one of these council estates was among the ones he showed? For instance, the fourth result on the Google image search for council estate, which even says Newham Council Estate right on it. Wouldn't it be very funny for Carl to include that picture in his video? Perhaps even at an especially ironic moment in the script if we're feeling particularly greedy today.
There are people who grow up here. They don't just live in a £350,000 house in South London and feel the need to leave because they don't feel safe at home. I mean, I imagine that a lot of these people don't feel safe at home, Shaun, but where the fuck are they going to go? You don't know anything. It's like you don't know anything about the real world.
Yes, you're right, Carl. The journalist grew up in the incredibly affluent area of Newham. It's nothing at all like this place, which is also in Newham. It's the same place, Carl. Oh, fucking hell. Now, okay, since the pedants are out today, someone's going to say this particular estate is in Canning Town in Newham, not Plaistow in Newham. Canning Town is a full 2 miles away from Plaistow, which basically means it's on the other side of the planet or whatever. Canning Town could be a degenerate shit heap compared to Plaistow, and I'll counter that by pointing out that average house prices, if that's how we're judging areas now, are actually higher in Canning Town than in Plaistow. So there. See, Carl, we're both just guessing here. You're guessing she grew up rich. I'm not. But I'll admit that I'm guessing and explain why I think that. You should also admit that you don't know, not make these bold declarations about other people's lives based on ignorance. We're not going to know the answer here short of actually asking the woman if she's lived in a council house, so you can, win a semantic argument. That's a thought, though. Someone ask her that, actually. Does anyone know her? I don't know. Don't harass her or anything, though. Thanks, folks. This wasn't a Patreon video, don't worry. I wouldn't charge for this nonsense.